Welcome members of council and viewing items on YouTube. We'll call the meeting to order. We just have a moment of silent reflection and then we'll stand for O Canada. Thank you. Members of council, you had a chance to look at items on the agenda. Is there any pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Councillor Carrick.
Yes, item D, number 2, family business.
Okay, thank you. So noted. Adoption of the minutes regular meeting held June 22nd, 2020 be adopted. Deputy Mayor Meloche and Councillor Adiccio Spagnolo, all in favor. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Mayor's comments, just a couple highlights. We're happy to be moving into step 3 of the province of Ontario's roadmap to reopen. Services at the LaSalle Civic Centre are not changing at this time. The hours of operation are Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. And we encourage patrons to make an appointment in advance when meeting with town personnel. Administration is in the process of determining a phased-in reopening schedule at the Balmer Complex. On July 26th, the arena will be open for minor sports user groups. The fitness center, the pool, fitness class will resume on August 3rd. Administration continues to plan for more normal resumption of activities in the fall. The Culture and Rec Department is looking forward to hosting a scaled down version of the night market at the LaSalle Civic Centre on Sunday, July 25th. COVID protocols will apply and we will be sharing more information with you in the coming days. So that brings us to delegation, the Normandy Sidewalk Review. Mr. Mara, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's report is in response to a council question that was brought forward to explore the opportunities to construct sidewalks on Normandy from North Woodmont to Huron Church Line. So this report before you tonight has been broken up into various sections throughout that corridor, and we speak about the various matters within each corridor. Normandy Road is important to know that Normandy Road between Huron Church Line and Malden Road is classified as a collector road. It is currently built to an urbanized cross section with curb and gutter and storm sewer. In the section of Normandy Road between North Woodmont and Malden Road, which is west of Malden Road, is still a rural cross section with ditch infills that have occurred over the years, and in some instances still an existing ditch in some of those locations. As noted, I'm going to run through each individual section, speak about the sidewalk at those various locations as I progress through this report. So the first section that we looked at, we progressed from the west end and moved easterly. So the section of Normandy Road between North Woodmont and Malden There is no recommendation for sidewalk at this time through this report. There are a number of improvements that are anticipated to occur in the future with respect to that section of road, both from development pressures, from various other things, and certainly putting in a sidewalk at this point in time on that section of road would be a bit premature and potentially needing to be replaced in the future. So as part of this report, there is no recommendation. There is an existing sidewalk already on that section of road, basically from Malden Road, on the south side of the road, from Malden Road over to that first street, Naples, there to provide some connectivity there. The second section of Normandy Road is from Malden to Ellis. Again, this is that section that crosses across the town hall site, and that section of Normandy Road already has sidewalks on both sides of the road. So again, as part of this report, there's really no recommendation for any sidewalk at that location. The next section is Ellis to Sovereign. So in this section, it's solely single-family homes on Normandy Road. On the south side of the road, there is an existing concrete sidewalk, and the option of providing a sidewalk on the north side of the road is available to council should they wish to proceed. And certainly that would entail a 1.5 meter wide concrete sidewalk. And it was tough in this location to identify a location of where that sidewalk could be installed. The hydro poles vary in distance off of the curb, and there's some locations there is room to put a sidewalk in between the curb and between the curb and the hydro poles, and a lot of locations there wasn't an ability to put that sidewalk in. So instead of creating a meandering sidewalk to address accessibility issues, we tried to pick a straight alignment between there, and the straightest alignment is on the backside of the poles. And to put in that sidewalk, it is roughly about $65,000 to put in that sidewalk from Ellis to Sovereign. And so that would go in continuous through driveways. In that location, it's important to note there are a number of landscaped areas that are on town property that would need to be modified and or amended to accommodate this, but it's not anticipated that any large mature trees would be removed. There may be some trimming that's required to accommodate that. The next section is Normandy from Sovereign to 7th. That was a decision that is already approved, and we are in the process of moving forward with that section of Normandy Road for the sidewalk on the north side of the road between Sovereign and 7th. That was already an approval through council at a previous meeting. The section between 7th and 8th, which is the entrance to Butermere Park. Again, that section of Normandy already has sidewalks on both sides of the road, so there is no recommendation for that section of Normandy through this report. The next section is from 8th Street, which is Butermere Park entrance, again to 10th Street. So that section already has an existing trail on the south side of the road. On the north side of the road, it's solely woodlot there. And there is no, there's very little development potential at this time for that existing natural easement that is on the north side of the road, given that there are a number of crossings already available with respect to the terminus of both at 8th Street and at 10th Street. There is no recommendation for sidewalk in this particular section. And then the final section is from 10th Street to here on Church Line. This section is a little bit more difficult in nature with respect to trying to pick an alignment for the sidewalk. Fortunately, at this location, sidewalk does fit between the hydro poles and the curb. So we are able to fit that sidewalk tight up against the back of the curb through this location. This location in this section of Normandy, the houses are not set back as far as some of the other locations. So certainly this will have impact on some of those existing driveways. But again, that would be a 1.8 meter wide sidewalk. As you install sidewalk up against the back of the curb, it should be slightly wider than the standard 1.5 meters. So that is why we are calling for the minimum of 1.8 continuous through driveways. And certainly that would be in the range of about $143,000. Again, that is going to require potential relocation of some isolated landscaped areas, but again, no mature trees will be affected and or removed as part of that. With respect to the sidewalk, we've also looked at pedestrian crossings and what is required with respect to pedestrian crossings. There are several existing crossings already on Normandy Road. There's one at the signalized intersection at Normandy and Malden. We have an always stop at Normandy and Ellis. We have a soon to be installed pedestrian crossing that was previously approved by council that will occur at Normandy and Sovereign. There's an existing always stop at Normandy and 7th. There's an existing pedestrian crossing at Normandy and 8th. There's an existing always stop at Normandy and 10th, and there's a signalized intersection at Normandy and Huron Church Line. One of the crossings that I forgot to mention is the existing pedestrian crossing at Cenotaph Park, which is not noted in the report. So certainly there is that other existing crossing. Regardless of a decision tonight for council, we are really looking at recommending one additional pedestrian crossing of Normandy, and that could occur at either 12th or 13th. Again, the range of that cost between $5,000 and $50,000. We have done some preliminary traffic analysis, and the warrants are pushing us to an upgraded pedestrian crossing there. In addition to upgrading that pedestrian crossing, there's a number of them that have to be upgraded along Normandy. So we're pushing the upper range of the $40,000 to $50,000 for a pedestrian crossing. As noted, it is difficult when we are putting sidewalks in through driveways. People do park their vehicles in the driveways. Normandy is posted as no parking currently, and certainly through the section between 10th and Huron Church Line, it does affect some of the availability of parking within the driveway. It's not impossible to park the number of cars in the driveway. It's really tight to do it. Even with the sidewalk, it'd be tight. Certainly, if you have 4 pickup trucks, it'd be tough to fit all 4 pickup trucks in your driveway. But the larger vehicles do seem to be a bit more problematic in that section. In summary, the financial impacts of this work is not contained within the 2021 budget. It is a significant impact. We haven't budgeted for it. So the recommendation before you tonight is that council receive this report for information and refer these projects to future year budgets for 2022 or any time future that council wishes to carry out any of these recommendations. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. I'll open it up to Mr. and Mrs. Rowdy. Oh, yes, Joe.
I don't believe Mr. and Mrs. Rowdy has logged into the meeting. They're not in the waiting room, and I don't believe that they're part of the participant list at this time.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, open it up to council questions. Councilor Brenner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Peter, to you, my question is, are any of the homes, are they part of any type of reduced setback from the road? I know that there are concerns, and we've all read the concerns of some of them about parking, as you mentioned, in the driveways. Are they standard setbacks there, or are there any that are modified setbacks?
Thank you. To the best of my knowledge, all of those setbacks on Normandy Road are standard. There are a number of larger estate lots closer to Ellis that have a larger setback. That was something that would have been put forward at the time of those development of those lots. Certainly, there's some significant setback, but most of the other houses, and I see Alan just popped on, but most of the other houses, I believe, are all standard setbacks. Alan, do you have anything further to add?
Thank you, Peter. Yes, the homes that are located basically from 10th Street down through Huron Church Line are all at the 25-foot minimum. They all were required to have a 25-foot setback. The other homes, which you traditionally see along Normandy, had a larger setback under the former zoning regulations. That's why you see that they have those larger, wider lots. But the newer homes, which were built, on Normandy, have the 25-foot minimum. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Councillor Carrick.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a general comment. Of course, I would love to see this go to Ellis to make it a full connection, because that would make it walkable and people wouldn't have to cross the street whatsoever who live on the north side of Normandy. But there are some implications here financially, and then we do have a list of priorities that we all agreed to. And I think so. I'm okay with all that stuff. I guess the question I have is, under the bylaws, current standards, is there room to 2 cars, vehicles for a driveway? Is there a limit as to the space? Guaranteed at least 2? I know some are single drives, stuff like that. Can you explain that kind of thing? Just because we're talking about sidewalks, we're talking about parking on a sidewalk or across the sidewalk, 2 houses up or 2 cars in the parking lot, in the driveway, so to speak, sorry. And then, you're going to be a little bit of hangover. You're not supposed to block a sidewalk, if am I understanding that correctly, right?
Mr. Burgess.
Is that number?
Thank you. The zoning bylaw requires a minimum parking of two parking spaces. They can be either in the exterior or within a garage. So all of the homes on Normandy would comply. So when a person has, say, for instance, 4 cars, like in one of the photograph or one of the images that Peter used, or 6 cars and 3 of the cars would have been over the drive or over the proposed sidewalk. That house actually is only required to have had 2 parking spots. So it's already in excess that it can actually accomplish 3, plus it has I think a 2-car garage. So the current bylaw does require that a car cannot sit over top of a parking lot, a sidewalk, and bylaw enforcement would be in a position to issue tickets if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council questions? Council's wishes. Councilor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. I echo the concerns of Councillor Carrick, and I do believe there are other priorities to worry about right now, and I would like to move the motion that we move this to a future budget consideration.
Moved by Councilor Reno, support by Deputy Mayor Meloche. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Councilor Akpata, opposed?
I just had a question, Your Worship, about the
Okay.
word future. Just a point of clarification. Does this mean the next upcoming one or some at the discretion of us? Or future does not have a time date for me, that's all. So I just want to make sure that I know when it's coming back to us.
The recommendation says this report goes to budgets, to the report 2022 budget session.
Thank you, sir. Again, just because Councilor Reno said future, I just wanted to make sure that we were aligned.
Okay, mover, Councilor Reno.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that I was just using the same vernacular as Mr. Mara when he said future budget, but I will go with the recommended period.
Thank you. So we have a mover, we have a seconder. Again, all in favor? It carries unanimously. Thank you. Item D2. That is the Malden Road Environmental Assessment Addendum. And I believe we have 2 delegates after Mr. Morrow's completed with his presentation. Mr. Militia, you'll confirm that yes or no after, correct?
I believe that Mr. Aitona is representing the homeowner,
Okay.
Mr. Pazzulli, I believe. I don't believe that Mr. Pazzulli is online. I believe Mr. Aitona is representing him.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Mr. Ayatona after Mr. Mara. Mr. Mara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's report is not the finalization of the Malden Road Environmental Assessment Addendum. This is just a delegation request that was requested from one of the homeowners on Malden Road. So certainly they made the request through the clerk's office to proceed the finalization of the Malden Road Environmental Assessment Addendum. As such, we have accommodated them tonight with this particular report for council's consideration and for council's indulgence in the process that has happened to date, and for the delegate to bring forward their concerns of what has happened to date and in the past. So a little bit of background information on this. Certainly, the Malden Road environmental assessment, and throughout this my presentation tonight, I'm probably going to use the word EA more often than saying environmental assessment, but that is what EA stands for. So certainly in 2009, the town embarked on completing the Malden Road EA from Todd Lane to Megan Drive. In 2009, that was a joint venture between the County of Essex and the town of LaSalle, because some of that road was both jointly owned by the town and the county. In 2009, in April, basically April 14th, 2009, the notice of study, the presentation was presented to council on the finalization and the recommendations that were being brought forward in that report in 2009. Subsequent to that finalization and presentation to council, following the process, after that is completed, what commences there is a public review period, and it's initiated again through council. That was initiated through council on May 28th, 2009, and through that process, a notice of study completion is issued, which then puts the document on view for the public to see what was being proposed and what was being brought forward to allow for the formalization of objections through the Ministry of the Environment. In 2009, the resident at 6220 Malden Road did issue an objection to the ministry in 2009. Most of the decisions regarding that objection was the result of realigning the current offset intersection at Buffard and Malden Road. Particularly the east leg of Buffard Road was being aligned to jog at Malden Road to create a single intersection at that location. So a bit of context regarding the 2009 preferred design. Again, I just kind of mentioned that is presented to council, and prior to the 30-day review, as part of the 30-day review period, the intention from the consultant, the town and the county, was to remove the offset intersection and create one intersection. During that 30-day review time period, during the study completion back in 2009, again, as I mentioned, the owner of 6720 Malden Road issued a Part 2 order. What that means is at that time, the Part 2 orders were a result of not agreeing with what was being presented and being brought forward. And certainly the town, the county, the consultant at the time in 2009 worked out various correspondence between the resident, and a decision was made at that time to leave the intersection in its offset form. And as such, that was brought forward in the form of basically a bit of a documentation relative to this intersection. It's important to note that that decision was made in 2009, and within all EAs, they do have traffic projections as part of the EA. So as part of the 2009 EA, they looked at traffic projections up to and including 2021. So they would have come up with solutions for the area and for Malden Road that dealt with 2009 traffic with projections up to 2021. So certainly decisions were made to leave the offset intersection. It was not a formal documentation in terms of revising the report and the figures within the report. It was documented only in the form of letters. And it was supposed to be, and those letters were supposed to be amended to the final EA report. That gives a bit of background information of what occurred in 2009. So certainly EAs do have a life expectancy or a time frame. Certainly within EAs, there is a process through the act and through the legislation and through the requirements and through best practices is, if work does not occur as part of an EA and it exceeds 10 years, there should be a 10-year review done, because throughout the times when EAs are done, things change, additional documentation occurs, traffic projections change, and things of that nature. And there's a formal process for that, and that's called the EA addendum process. It is a process through the requirements of the EA Act and the various legislation and things of that nature that bring forward those types of things to review and revisit changes that have occurred throughout the years. Certainly in 2019, now here we are today, and Council has initiated a EA addendum, and through that, again, some of that was parcel of a lot of concerns that Council and Town Administration have been hearing about Malden Road, potential improvements that Council wanted to carry out on Malden Road. But again, the 10-year timeframe lapsed, and we really needed to take a look and evaluate what is supposed to be built in 2019 today, and what is going to accommodate us for today and into the future. So certainly since 2009, there have been a significant amount of things that have occurred, various studies. Again, in 2017, transit was introduced on Malden Road. We completed a new county official plan, and subsequent after the county official plan, the town of LaSalle completed their new official plan. In the time frame, we completed a town-wide transportation master plan, and we also completed an active transportation master plan town-wide. Also in that time frame, Laurier Parkway was put in. Again, that changes a lot of the aspects of what can and happens on Malden Road. It is important to note that also as part of this EA addendum process today, we're looking at traffic projections and dealing with traffic today, but we're also now trying to project traffic for growth for the next 20 years from today. So we're looking at traffic projections up to 2041. So certainly the EA addendum process is working through that. Part of the process of this EA addendum is we went out for public consultation, and it's recognized that what we presented as part of the public consultation process still showed the realigned intersection that was previously proposed in 2009. The project team that was part of this addendum today did not have proper documentation relative to what was the decision made in 2009 to address the Part 2 order at that time. So certainly we presented the intersection being realigned as if it was approved and finalized. And certainly during that public consultation process, Mr. Pazzulli, the resident at 6720, came forward and started to ask us questions, and he provided a great deal of documentation. He had a great deal of information available for us. And certainly when we received that information, we had to step back a little bit and review how best to deal with this. So certainly what we did when we received the information from Mr. Pazzulli was on the previous decisions back in 2009, both the consultant, Stantec, and the town, we had to reach out to the Ministry of the Environment to find a way of how to move this forward. Given the concerns and where we were in the status of the project, we received direction and guidance from the MHCP on how to bring this forward. Certainly, we had to go back and look at leaving the offset intersection in its place for the current EA. And certainly that will form part of the final report on how we are trying to deal with Malden Road and addressing the concerns at Buffard. It's very tricky at this location, leaving the offset intersection. It is the third highest collision rate intersection along the corridor, with Sprucewood and Normandy being above those. This is the third highest collision rate intersection currently, based on a 5-year review. And certainly as part of the final addendum report, we need to recognize that we presented this in a manner as if it was finalized. However, we went back and reviewed this, and there is going to be specific sections within the final EA addendum report that really speak to this intersection on what are the current concerns, what will be the future concerns at this location in this intersection, and how do we have to deal with it. So certainly as part of the final and new design and recommendation as part of this current EA addendum, we are recommending the offset intersection again. Sorry, not to keep the offset intersection, I apologize. We are recommending to realign the intersection to create one intersection. Again, we are looking to realign it on the east side of the east leg of Buffard to realign. which again affects the property at 6720. So certainly this does affect Mr. Pazzuli's property. It is one of the only properties that have a house and a detached garage on it. The rest of the properties of where this realignment occurs is all vacant lands. We did review on trying to leave the intersection in its offset form. It's not a safe situation. As part of this, we also reviewed offsetting the intersection or realigning the intersection on the west leg of Buffard. And again, it will be documented in the final report. If we realign the intersection on the west leg of Buffard, there's probably about 6 to 8 houses that we would have to displace in order to make that occur. There's a number of houses along Buffard further west of Malden Road. Just to start the curve, to make the curve proper, probably about 6 or 7 houses, six houses at that location to start the bend. There's some vacant land, but as you get up to Malden Road, there's at least 2 houses at Malden Road that would have to be displaced as well. So certainly EAs are a documented process. This is what the process is for. In all instances, again, this is not the only location where property is required. There is a number of locations where property is required along the entire corridor, across all the fronts of the property, across all the frontages of all these houses that front onto Malden. There is requirements for property there. At most of the intersections at Laurier and at Ream, there is requirements to accommodate the updated and widened and improved intersections. And there's property required at all of those locations. So certainly the impacts of property with respect to EAs does come significantly, and that's part of the process to review the best we can how best to deal with these locations. So in closure, again, this is a active EA process. The delegate has decided to wanting to come before council before the EA document was finalized. So we haven't been able to share all the final traffic analysis with the delegate at this stage. It is all going to be documented in the final report. The intention is when we make the report final and public to everybody, including council, is when the delegates will receive that information, and they have advised us that they'd like to be notified specifically, and we put that on file. So when that is finalized and when we're presented to council, they will receive a copy of the finalized report, all the various traffic analysis, and the decision making around the new realigned Buffard intersection. So that is the process that will be transpiring going forward. So given that this is a current EA process, and again, sorry, let me go back a bit. So when we do present this to council and finalize the report, again, we will be issuing another notice of study completion, again, subject to council's approval of the final EA document, the EA amendment document, and we will issue another notice of study completion, which will open it up for a 30-day review period. And the delegate and the resident will have an opportunity at that point to review and provide formal objection process through that of nature if they feel that we have not addressed the Ministry of the Environment's directions on how to deal with this going forward. So in closure, again, given that this is a current active EA process, the recommendation for tonight's report is that council receive the information contained in the report tonight, and that council encourage the delegate to continue to work with the town administration and finalize the report through the process, and that we would continue to engage them throughout the relative remainder portions of this process. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm complete. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Before we go to questions, we'll ask Mr. Ayatona to give his comments in relation to what Mr. Maher just said. Hi, welcome, Mr. Ayatona.
Thank you. Your worship and members of council, thank you for allowing me to address you this evening with respect to the Malden Road Class EA addendum process on behalf of my client, Tony Pazzuoli, who's with me this evening. Tony and/or I have spoken with most of you, and we appreciate your time and attention to the concerns that Tony has raised. The facts of the situation are eminently clear. The town made a commitment to Tony in 2009 that Buffard Road would not be realigned at Malden Road. This commitment was confirmed by the town's engineering consultant, who stated the offset intersections are safe and will function as well as other offset intersections along the corridor. He went on to state that these changes will be incorporated into the final design of the improvement project. This commitment was also confirmed in writing by the Ministry of Environment, indicating its expectation that the commitment be implemented accordingly. When presented with these facts during the current DA process, town administration first indicated it was not aware of this commitment. Earlier this year, when provided with clear documented evidence of the commitment, town administration still chose to proceed with the intention of not honoring the commitment. Administration has remained steadfast in its communications with us that the realignment of Buffard Road will be its recommendation. The administrative report before you this evening states quite clearly that the recommended design is to realign the east leg of Buffard Road at Malden Road to create one intersection and remove the current offset intersection. The administration's approach to now choose to renege on its prior commitment to Tony is somewhat puzzling when you consider that it is the same administration that issued a building permit to Tony to construct a 3-car garage workshop in 2012. As he does in all things that are construction related, Tony, with the town's approval, built a significant structure the size of an average house, fully bricked and complete with a heated concrete floor. Clearly, the town ought to have been aware in 2012 of the commitment made to Tony before it issued the building permit for the garage. The issuance of the permit was consistent with this commitment. Tony invested significant time and resources to make the structure a reality. He certainly is concerned that a decision by the town to go back on its commitment will see this investment in its present and future plans come crashing down. The town's citizens should be able to rely on the political and administrative individuals who serve them. Tony relied on these individuals. He took them at their word. In 2009, he secured what he thought was peace of mind, in that he could enjoy the unfettered use of his property through to his retirement years. In 2012, he secured what he thought was peace of mind, in that he could enjoy the long-term use of a brand new garage workshop that he painstakingly and with the passion of a true craftsman designed and constructed. Tony's dreams then continue to be his dreams today. He is not asking you for anything more than the town already committed to him and confirmed through its actions. We are sensitive to the difficult situation in which council finds itself. However, it is important to note that Tony did not create the situation. The town freely gave him a commitment that Buffard Road would not be realigned. His expectation is that this commitment be honored. There are certainly a multitude of other means available to the town to address its traffic concerns. We would certainly be willing to sit down and share ideas that would not require the town to break its word to Tony. Thank you for your time, and we'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Iatona. Oh, there he is. I don't have to ask Mr. Maher to come back. He's there. So before we go to council questions, I'll have Mr. Maher address a couple of those issues, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In all the correspondence that have been provided from the town consultant, the decision was made. I don't recall seeing any form of commitment. And again, the word commitment came in the correspondence between Mr. Pazzulli and the Ministry of the Environment at the time, and that is what Mr. Iatona is referring to. A decision was made in 2009 based on the information in 2009. Again, looking at 2009 and the traffic requirements in 2009 up to 2021, the intersection has remained in the offset form. It has functioned properly. Some can question whether it functions safely. Again, being the third highest collision rate along this corridor, some can question whether that was a safe situation. Again, the only two intersections that have higher collision rates in the last 5 years is Sprucewood as being number one, and Normandy being number two. Number three is the Buffard intersection. Half of the value is the rest of the intersections. Again, after the fourth highest intersection rate is certainly Laurier. The fifth highest intersection rate is Ream Road, just so that you can get some comparison. And the values are half the values at Laurier and Ream as compared to Buffard. So certainly that is, it has been, again, the EAs do have a limit on them. They are projections. They are provided for a time period. And should you wish to change that time period, it's a documented process through the addendum process to review on how best to deal with it. Certainly when Mr. Pazzulli applied for a permit, there was no requirement that we could not issue a permit to Mr. Pazzulli. He chose to proceed and build a very nice garage. Again, it's a very nice detached garage. I envy that situation. It's a nice situation to have, and certainly it is something that is there. But certainly as we progress through this, and should the recommendations remain the same, when council decides to proceed with property purchases, that gets reflected in the value of what would happen in terms of purchasing the property. Certainly, all EAs have this same effect when we are trying to provide solutions to a community. Again, we are looking at this as a community-wide benefit, and certainly the intersection is something that needs to be addressed to removing that offset form. We did look at realigning the intersection on the opposite side of Malden, but again, we are going to affect probably 6 to 8 to 12 residents, depending on how we progress through there. Certainly when you go through the EA process, you have to evaluate effects on private property. And certainly when you look at the effects of one person, and we don't take this lightly, again, we recognize these are people's houses. We do recognize that, but at the end of the day, we are trying to provide a corridor, improvements to Malden Road that benefit the community as a whole. It is classified as the major arterial road. And certainly you will see as part of the final report, just the improvements to Malden Road is not the final improvements that will solve all the problems. Again, as part of that, when you look at our transportation master plan, the Ream Road extension, Sanders West Parkway extension is also needed to get traffic moving. The DOT extension, that is the extension of DOT up to Ellis Street, is also needed. That's a parallel route to Malden Road that will relieve traffic on Malden Road. If we solely looked at Malden Road as the only solution, we would be looking at probably a 5-lane cross section. We recognize that is not achievable through this corridor. That is not what the town envisions this corridor to be. Certainly a 5-lane cross section would probably remove houses all on one side of the road, which is not something that we would bring forward. Again, it's a combined solution of an overall transportation network, and it's going to be a formal documentation as part of the final EA addendum. With that, Mr. Mayor, I hope I've addressed a couple of the comments that were brought forward from Mr. Aitona, and I'm available for any further questions.
I would suggest, Mr. Mara, don't go far. I'll open it up to council questions. Now we'll start with Councillor Reno, Councillor Akpada, Councillor Desjardins, and then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Your Worship. My questions, Peter, are this. First of all, this EA process, we see master plans come in front of us every year. We see plans come in front of us every year that are for the future. And a lot of times we get partially into them, and to make it simple, money gets in the way. What kind of cost are we looking at to complete this type of EA? Is this, we talk about a $50 million park on Front Road. We talk about a $50 million dig. What kind of money are we looking at to actually be able to put together all of these types of recommendations?
Thank you, Councillor Reno. Currently, we are in the process of finalizing the EA addendum. Currently, the construction estimate is in the range of $14 to $18 million. That does not include purchasing of property. So to construct Malden Road from Normandy all the way to Sandwich Secondary School, is certainly a significant venture. When you add in property, it's probably fairly significant. For council's information, we don't envision this happening. This is going to have to be a phased approach, and certainly as you progress northerly, there are stresses and pressures on Malden, between Stewart and Normandy, at Ream. So there are certain pressures along the way. But what we've come to find out is there are a lot of other utilities. So, for example, Union Gas wants to replace their entire gas main through the corridor. They have aged infrastructure in there. So certainly, if that is the case, we actually have to let Union Gas go in a year ahead of time before any construction, so that they can relocate their infrastructure before we start our work. So by the time council receives the final report, and then by the time council agrees to proceed forward with various phases, and isolate which direction do we want to start phases from, there needs to be a bit of sequential coordination between phases as well. Again, it's nice to try to do intersections, and move forward and move out from the various intersections, but certainly there are some, again, given some of the existing utilities that have to be relocated, that becomes problematic. Again, it's all going to be kind of summarized in the final report. Sorry, I belabored the question a little bit too much, but certainly from a cost perspective, it's a pretty significant venture that will probably occur over a number of years. And certainly council has seen 2009 was the original EA. The only section of Malden Road that was done was Todd Lane to Normandy, and then it has sat on the shelf. Certainly going forward from here, council would have to review and how to best deal with bringing these aspects forward in subsequent budgets.
Councillor Reno.
Yes, thank you. Just one other question. I mean, obviously, there are going to be other concerns that are going to be brought forward. I'm sure that'll be part of that final report. And I'm just concerned, the actual realignment of that intersection, does that have to be done in a certain order? I mean, I can appreciate when you have to move things for the overall plan and things, but the actual offset of that intersection, does that have to be done do you think, in your opinion, Mr. Mara, is that something that's going to be part of a first or second phase, or is that something that could be waiting until a later phase?
Thank you, Councilor Reynolds, through you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation coming forward as part of the report is that we are going to start from north and move southerly. So we are anticipating doing the improvements from Normandy Road and progressing southerly for a number of reasons. One, that is where the concentration in the built up areas are. Those are where the existing houses are. It's bringing people to an already widened town center, Malden Town Center. It is where the commercial aspects are. One of the other main reasons is most of the drainage does end up in Cahill Drain, and we do have to replace the storm sewer. So I do have to do the storm sewer from the Cahill Drain, which is just south of Normandy, and with new pipes headed southerly. So again, if I was to decide to start at Ream, I automatically have to do a new storm sewer all the way up to the Cahill and dig up the road anyway. So that's part and parcel of some of the discussions that we do need to have as we progress and choose movement forward. In this particular area, again, while the intersection is one of the higher rates of collisions, certainly the demand and the pressures are not here because the growth hasn't happened out in this area just as of yet. So as growth occurs, I really do think we have to continue moving southerly. But again, my best guess is, this particular area, if council was to approve and move in a sequential routine and apply the money, we're probably into the 5-6 year range before we get to this area. Again, that's subject to council agreeing to proceed and continue to spend $18 million plus property purchases and all that stuff over a 6 to 10 year period. That would be kind of my guess of when we get to this particular intersection. Again, if it doesn't meet that timeline and we expire the 10 years, we're into probably another EA addendum at that point to kind of review this again. Certainly something that we have to be cognizant of in continuing to move this forward. So certainly I hope that provided you the answer, Councilor Reno.
I'll just say one last thing. I know, Joe, you've got some comments. My last thing here is I appreciate your answers. They're exactly what I was looking for. What I would request if we were to move forward with allowing the delegate and yourselves and the consultant to basically hash this out. I mean, it seems like we kind of have our position already kind of cemented. So I'm not quite sure how much hashing out there will be, but nonetheless, I think when this comes back to council in that final form, I think we're going to need some kind of side note to those traffic counts and where they were 10 years ago, where they were projected to be, where they ended up being, and now where they're going to be. I would really like to know, did we meet the goals of that plan 10 years ago? Because I mean, really, as you said earlier in your presentation, we now have Laurier Parkway. We're also going to have a major east-west coming between Sandwich West Parkway and Ream Road. So I mean, there's a lot of data, and trust me, I'm not asking because I want to have pages and pages of data, but I mean, I think this is a really difficult decision for council to have to make. This council has expropriated land in the last few years, and it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, we do it because it's what has to be the best for 30,000 people. So before I'm ready to make that kind of decision, I do want you guys to go back to talking, and I would like to, in that final report, at least get a side note with some of those traffic counts to kind of explain to us why something that was taken off the table 10 years ago has to be put back on the table today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reno. Mr. Militia.
Just a follow-up to Councilor Reno's question. If members of council that were on council at the time back in 2009, when we commenced the improvements to Malden Road based on the EA at that time, I believe it was the 2010 time period. That was when we had a large amount of government funding coming our way with respect to the stimulus funding, if those that'll remember that time. Just as an order of magnitude, now again, just please bear in mind that the portion of Malden from Ream to Todd Lane is from Normandy to Todd Lane is much different in its configuration to what is expected to be south of Ream, of Normandy. But I would say that portion that you see in front of the town hall, in front of the shopping areas, and right up to Todd Lane, that was in 2009 $10. That was about 12 or 13 million dollars. Of that, we contributed about somewhere around 40 to 45%. We contributed more than that. We contributed about 50 or 55%, with about 40 or 45% coming from the federal and provincial governments. So it gives you an order of magnitude of what you get, and those are in 2009 dollars. And I would confirm that back with what Mr. Marr is saying, prior to us actually getting to the point of actually doing the road work and the work that you see there was a fair bit of utility work, whether it was Union Gas, Bell, Cogeco, Hydro One, and Essex Power, all within that corridor, all trying to find a spot for their particular utility. So it's a very complicated scenario when we're going along Malden. So, best case scenario, if today we had the EA approved and we had a large sum of cash available, we would be a fair bit before we designed and got our road construction underway, given what's happening. I'd also like just to add, I know that council has had it on their priority that they would like to see some improvements at Ream and Malden. And again, one of the challenges we've had as administration is that we've been going through the CA addendum process, and it's identifying that in order to make the intersection work effectively at Ream, we need to take care of that piece basically from Normandy to Ream. in order to make this intersection work at Ream, which turns what might simply look as a simple solution at that intersection into a much more complex problem to solve, because we have to deal with everything from Normandy up to Ream in order to get it to work right, and even a little beyond. My last point is we understand and we sympathize with the property owners, again, Mr. Pizzoli, as well as some of the others that have come forward, because I wish that was the only property we had to deal with. But there is a variety of property, particularly at the intersections, that we are going to have to go and acquire in some method, whether through negotiation or whether through expropriation. So it is, again, this is not the only time that unfortunately council is going to be faced with this type of decision, because we have many property purchases to do along this stretch in order to get the final solution that we need to address what we all have been hearing is traffic concerns, entering, exiting, active transportation, and all those things that we hear when we do all the consultation and outreach. We're hearing all that. We need to have this, we need to have that. Well, in order to do that, the road footprint, if I'll call it that, it's got to get wider. And we are going to be faced with this challenges, not only at this intersection, but along the way, everywhere we go, along even just the side yard. So, it is unfortunately a very difficult process. And it's unfortunately one that doesn't make many friends, quite frankly. But it is one that, again, it's, as Mr. Marr alluded to, it's for the community. And unfortunately, we have to go through this process, and there is a process to fairly compensate those that are losing something as part of this. It gives them the dollars. It doesn't necessarily, unfortunately, give them the emotional compensation for those that have been there for long periods of time.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. We have Councillor Akpata and then Councillor DeJarley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess through you to Mr. Mara, one of my questions, sir, is, I'm just looking at my notes here. The documents were supposed to be attached in 2009. Is that correct? Did I understand that from you?
Yes, the final letter from Dillon Consulting at the time in resolving this matter indicated that the document, the letter, the various sketches that kept the offset intersection was to be appended to the final report. It didn't require a new final report. It was to be appended to the final report. Certainly in my aspect, in the hard copy, in the information that I have available to me, that appended letter did not occur. So we weren't aware of the decisions that were made in 2009 until Mr. Pizzoli brought them forward. And we are lucky that Mr. Pizzoli brought them forward, because again, if we would have finalized it in the offset, in the realigned form, making the assumption that it was finalized, we would have finalized the EA, and we would have had a harder time with the objection process. But certainly it gave us an opportunity to go back and revisit that from that aspect and make sure that that occurred. So the documentation that we had as part of the final report didn't have the appending letter, which made this modification in decision.
Just again, I wasn't here in 2009, and I'm looking at some of the faces, and I know it's some of these other folks were not. Do you have any insight as to why that didn't happen? Because the concern would be is that as we go forward with anything, the homeowners that Mr. Militia just so passionately spoke about, us either leaving or keeping, may be wondering what might happen if we don't have documents attached to any other package that we put out or package that we have. And it becomes incumbent on the homeowner to keep documents to show that a decision was made. I find that a little disconcerting, because even in my work life, my previous work life, it's always been on the documents of yesterday. You build your decisions for tomorrow. And I understand that incidents happen. I'm just trying to see if you have any insight, Mr. Mara, from your capacity as to why it was the citizen that brought the documents of the decision that we did not have them.
I have a difficult time providing that formal answer. Again, I was not here in 2009.
Understood.
Certainly, it may have been something that was completed could have been an oversight from the consultant, from the town engineer at the time. Particularly, one thing of importance is that this section of roadway was actually under the jurisdiction of the county in 2009. So I don't know, and I've confirmed with the county that they don't have any of this documentation either prior to this discussion. So it's very difficult to provide that that answer to you. Certainly, it is grateful and recognize that we didn't proceed with any recommendations or that any improvements in this area for the duration of the previous EA. And certainly going forward, we will be looking at how best to document that. But again, I can't speak to how and when that decision was made and the pending documents and things of that nature.
And that's more than fair, Mr. Marr. I didn't want to put you on the spot. I want that concern expressed, that it's difficult when documentation over the years is missing, especially when, you know, citizens, the municipality are moving forward based on plans as to what we don't have. Your worship, may I ask Mr. Iatona a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Iatona, I just, again, looking at my notes, I've got a couple of questions for you. You talked about other means available, sir. Can you expand on that for me, please?
You muted your mic, Mr. Iatona. There we go.
Sorry about that. Whenever
No problem.
you look at a broader transportation plan like you're doing with Malden Road, there are certainly alternatives that arise that are considered options that would successfully move the traffic. Roads parallel to Malden Road, for example, through vacant areas. You've already constructed one road between Buffard and Laurier Parkway. And I don't know if we haven't seen the report, we haven't seen any of the data, so it's difficult for me to comment, but certainly cul-de-sacing one of the legs of Buffard Road at Malden Road would eliminate accident frequencies and would put the traffic where it belongs, probably on Laurier Parkway. So those are just some of the ideas that come to mind without sitting down and looking at it in great detail. That's what I have.
Hey, thank you. Mr. Akpata?
A supplemental, sir. With the talking of documents, is it fair to say that were there any other discussions or anything else that may have come up that you may have documented that we may not have as a part of this discovery? Or were there any other meetings that may have taken place to support the decision in 2009?
Well, there was certainly dialogue back and forth between Mr. Pozzuoli and the town's engineer, Vic Hebert, with respect to the situation in 2009. But it certainly was put in writing very clearly by Mr. Hebert that, I mean, quoting the letter he sent us, it says quite clearly, as a result, Buffard Road will not be realigned. It's pretty clear. And the ministry's letter back to us even said, or back to Mr. Pozzuoli, even suggested that failure to comply would be a contravention of the Environmental Assessment Act and may result in prosecution under the Act. So that's mainly what he relied on. Were there discussions? Yes. He did talk with other people. And in the end, the town agreed not to realign the intersection.
One more, Your Worship, for Mr. Mara. And Mr. Militia, if you'd like to comment as well, just to make sure that I understand the process. The documents and the assessment's going to go forward. There's still going to be discussion about this entire process and where it may go. And one of the things that we said in this motion is that the municipality will meet with Mr. Iatona and the landowner to have further discussions to see if we can come to a successful resolution. Is that something, do I understand that correct, gentlemen?
Mr. Mara?
Yes, the process is to continue to have the dialogue. In terms of reviewing what is being proposed, Based on the engineering information, based on the traffic analysis, the intersection does need to be realigned. Certainly, to Mr. Ayatona's point about various alternative methods, that is an opportunity, that is an option, and that was spelled out and determined through the townwide townwide transportation master plan. That was looked at a broader view of the entirety of the area, what is to be developed, and it identified what are the various connector roads, collector roads, what is the arterial roads, and certainly, again, as I had mentioned, the final recommendation on Malden Road is not the sole solution to Malden Road. There's a whole host of other surrounding roads that do need to be completed. So with respect to bringing this forward from that aspect, Councillor Acapata, certainly we would be bringing this forward, and it has been looked at a formal context. Certainly, with respect to continued dialogue, we would certainly continue to have the dialogue, but at some point, the EA does have to be finalized, and we do have to bring something forward. The dialogue may be to agree to disagree and bring it forward, finalize it. And at some point, if the objection is still felt to not meet the intent of the EA, the opportunity is to go through the process through the 30-day review period, and the Ministry of the Environment is the gatekeeper for the EA process. They make the final decisions on how it works and how the final decisions are made. So if we haven't met the intent of the EA addendum process, and certainly Mr. Ayatona and Mr. Pizzulli have the opportunity to provide that dialogue to the ministry, they will make a decision on what has to be done going further from that point. So that is what the process entails, is that they will make a decision whether we met the intent or whether we haven't met the intent, and they will make a decision what additional work or what has to kind of be revisited or things of that nature. So certainly that is what the process would be for the EA. So certainly we would be happy to continue dialogue with this particular resident and Mr. Ayatona. Again, there might be opportunities that we don't need the entire property. If they're happy with leaving the house at the location, maybe we can modify the intersection slightly to remove the garage, and he still keeps the property, the house stays there. Again, we haven't had any of that type of dialogue to shifting and moving around. We've offered to meet a number of times. We haven't had an opportunity to meet. Again, it's been requested to have in-person meetings, and up until recently, again, we haven't been having in-person meetings. So certainly there might be an opportunity to adjust, but I can tell you that if we go into this, we anticipate that certainly August is when we're going to finalize the EA addendum. If we begin to try to modify things and best how to deal with it in this location, we were trying to have that dialogue with the delegate and the resident for a while, but again, it's just been letter communication back and forth of the formal documentation. So certainly we can massage it a little bit, probably see if we can leave the house, how we can modify driveways and things of that nature. Again, leaving the house where it is located if we did do the realignment, it puts the intersection, the driveway right into the intersection, not an ideal location. But there might be opportunities to modify that and change that around. But that requires discussion with the property owner the best we can. And certainly those are the types of things that we'd be open to having with the homeowner and his consultant, and or again, we leave it the way it is, and again, it just gets identified as the entirety of the property, and then when it's ready, and then when it's time to do that particular piece and through council's direction, the property would be purchased at that time and go from there.
One final one, your worship.
Did Mr. Militia want to add something? Excuse me, Mr. Councillor Akpata. No? Okay, Councillor Akpata.
And as we've spoken about, if there's other options, Mr. Militia also spoke about that other houses may be affected. Are those folks able to participate in the process as direct as Mr. Ayatona and his client is? Or how are we making sure that if other options, because we keep talking about that, are explored, that other folks who may be affected or have other input are able to be part of the process? I just want to make sure that I understand that.
Certainly what has been involved to date is everybody has been notified. So basically, If we are looking at alternative options that we are going to affect other people who were not previously affected, the report will not be finalized in August. We'll probably be into another public meeting because we
Okay.
will need to identify if we're gonna look at if council's direction is to leave the intersection and realign Buffard on the other side of the road, that would be one thing. And I would have to go back and probably have another public consultation meeting. The people there are going to say, why is this change? And that discussion has to occur. So certainly the people who are specifically affected were notified of this project. And certainly we made sure that Mr. Pizzulli received, and all the property owners of this Buffard realignment received couriered letters at the time. And that's what prompted Mr. Pizzulli to take a look at this. So we've tried to bring the people who were most negatively affected information to this project in a manner that we knew that they knew about this. So we specifically made an attempt with Mr. Pizzulli and all of the properties on Buffard in this Buffard realignment that all the property owners received couriered letters as the same as the Laurier intersection, as the Ream intersection, and some of the other major property impacts where we felt that, it's getting close to the house. We really need to let them know that they need to see what's happening. And so that we've done that attempt, and that's going to be documented as part of the consultation process. But if we look at alternative options, we are not finalizing this in August, and we will be going probably back out to public consultation again. And we do have to pick a solution on how best to deal with the Buffard intersection and the offset nature of this location. So certainly it is not ideal to leave it in an offset form. It's certainly just the offset the way it sits. So we will have to find a solution on how best to deal with it. And certainly we're trying to meet the intent of the various other master plans that were completed that looked at transportation holistically across the broader area and the broader geographical development process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marr. I appreciate your comments. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Desjardins, then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Councillor Akpata asked some of the same concerns that I had. My one last question, back in 2009, do we know if there, or any EA, it has a time frame on it? Do we put that in writing? Like in 2009, did we say that this was good till 2019 or 2021? Do we put time limits on things like that? Or do we put it in writing for time limits?
Thank you. Within EA documents, it is documented within the EA documents of what the planning horizon is. So certainly in the 2009 report, it does say that the planning horizon was up to 2021.
Okay.
There is a separate evaluation or a separate form. We call it the Class Environmental Assessment Bible. It is prepared by the Municipal Engineers Association of Ontario of how best to run through class environmental assessments. There is a bit of a clause in there that if an EA is completed, in addition to what's contained within the EA and the planning horizons within any identified EA, in addition to that, if a EA has sat dormant and no construction has occurred within a 10-year period, a 10-year review should be done to update the aspects of that report. So in essence, you do the 10-year review. If nothing has changed, you carry on. If something has changed, then you go through the addendum process. So we knew a number of things have changed. So we went straight to the addendum process through this aspect to ensure that we were documenting what has changed in the last 12 years, what has been introduced in the last 12 years, and to recognize that and bring forward a solution that's going to serve the town population today and into the future from this point. So again, we're in 2021. To Councilor Reynolds' point, it's a very valid point where, a summary of comparison of traffic analysis done in 2009 to today to the future where we projected. Again, it was a short planning horizon window in 2009 when this was done. Again, we were coming out of the recession. The speculation of growth was probably a little bit unknown. There was a number of things happening. So today we look at planning horizons for road projects for a 20-year period, and that's what we are doing today for this particular update and amendment.
Okay, thank you. So I guess then it's kind of an ongoing change, and then not knowing about these appending forms or letters, we don't know if that date ever appeared as, say, 2009 or 2021. Is that correct?
Again, the information that was, the decisions that were made in 2009, again, would have been made on the information contained within the EA document that was prepared in 2009. So again, it would have looked at the 2009 transportation up to 2021. Again, that's what they looked at, the entire corridor. So if they made this change of a recommendation at this particular location, they wouldn't have reevaluated this particular location for anything beyond 2021.
Okay, I'm concerned because the resident has gone ahead and built this lovely garage and workshop with the idea that he was going to have that chunk of property beside his driveway forever. And here we are saying, no, you can't do it. So I just wanted to confirm some timelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeJarle. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. I guess a lot of the questions have already been asked. The concern really lies with this document that they have a copy of that we seem to not have a copy of. And have we exhausted every option for this property and how this road could be aligned? I just want to make sure that, I know we're saying August, we want to get this done, but I want to ensure we don't rush into this, that we're making sure that we've come up with the best possible solution. I realize we have to take properties. It's something I do not like to do. And I always hope that's our last possible option. But I wonder to myself, with this EA, when we talk about all of these improvements along Malden Road, let's say we have the roundabout or light or whatever we do at the Ream intersection, and we have other areas down the road that have been added. If those improvements are made, do we still need this intersection to be aligned? Wouldn't that alleviate some of that pressure or constant traffic that people are kind of rushing to get in front of?
Thank you. This intersection realignment is going to be solely driven on growth in the Howard Buffard area. Again, the location of the Buffard and the east leg of Buffard is all undeveloped land at this point in time. Again, as council is aware, we have a number of drainage concerns out there that we have to go through a drainage master plan and find a solution for drainage. And then as the development continues to occur back in the Howard Buffard area, that's when you'll start to see this intersection becoming very stressed in terms of what happens at this location. And certainly we believe we have exhausted all of the options relative to how to make this intersection function properly for today in the future traffic projections. That is going to be documented in the report. Again, that's in keeping with the town-wide transportation master plan, which looked at the network as a holistic approach. And then we took that and drilled it in a little bit more specific at this particular location. So we believe, again, it's going to be documented in the report that we've exhausted all the various options and meeting all the intents of the various reports and in the holistic approach to the overall transportation network, and providing an option that is going to affect the least amount of properties. And that is part and parcel of some of the balances that you have to do when you're going through and developing solution, that you pick something that affects the least amount of properties. And that's what we believe we have to have in front of us as part of this realignment of the east leg of Buffard.
Okay, and then so I think I understand what you're saying about looking at options. Now, you mentioned 720 Malden as being the area that you're really more focused on for the completion of that leg. Is that right? Was that the right address?
Sorry, Mr. Pazzuli's house is located at 6720 Malden. He is currently immediately east of the current existing intersection of the west leg of Buffard and Malden.
So if we were to proceed with your recommendation in August, we are looking at that entire property to be able to continue the intersection?
Again, we haven't had the formal discussions with Mr. Pazzuli and Mr. Itona about Again, they have been after looking at removing the realignment altogether. We haven't had any discussion with them about keeping the realignment in place and how best to make the existing house stay. Again, I don't think we can keep the garage. I really think the garage is something that has to go. It's immediately opposite the existing intersection, but we've had no discussion with the resident at this point on trying to finagle this intersection to try to keep the house and how best to make that work. That's just been absent at this point. Again, we've had a number of letter communications. Again, we have a process in front of us. So certainly at this point, the way it sits is it probably, again, if it was my house and seeing the intersection, I wouldn't want to be staying there the way it sits. So again, we don't know whether we need the whole property. Again, through the expropriation process, as we fine tune and adjust the detailed design, how best to fit this in there. Again, we would present that to the homeowner at that time. Again, if they wanted to stay in the house and we only buy what we need for the road improvements, then we could work around that. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, it's probably not an ideal situation to stay in that location. So certainly, again, it's part of the process, the expropriation process. If there's enough injury or infection to the property, it will be forced upon the town to buy and purchase the entirety of the property. So that is still part of the final detailed design in the expropriation process.
And I realize we don't have a final design yet, but let's say we do this, we expropriate, we put this intersection here. Is this a light intersection? Is this just going to continue as a two-way stop intersection? What would be the ideal situation here?
This becomes a signalized intersection.
Okay.
Currently, the recommendation with the realignment, this will become a signalized intersection.
Thank you. So I guess my hope is just that at this time we'll continue discussions with the homeowner and make sure that we exhaust all options available before this comes back in August, which I realize isn't that long from now, but hopefully we can have those discussions with them as soon as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Spagnolo.
Thank you. Through you. So my main concern is just how Mr. Pasquale has a written document and that he based that on building his garages. So I'm torn because he has that document, but I also know the congestion on Malden Road and how this would benefit Malden Road as well. So my question is, so Peter or Mr. Mara, I know you had mentioned this wouldn't happen towards his area for what, 5 to 7 years? Is that correct?
Again, that's my best case. That's my best guess at this point in time. Again, it really comes down to budget dollars and what council wants to proceed with. Certainly, there's a year worth of design. There's a year worth of utility relocates. And probably as we progress through phases, it's certainly probably my best guess is 6 to 7 years. That's if the money's available and we found the tree that grows it and things of that nature. So certainly that'd be my best guess if council is providing us the funds to carry this forward.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a couple questions. So in a follow-up to Councillor Spagnolo, when you say your guess is 6 to 7 years, that's if everything works perfect. We get the money, we get the Union Gas or Enbridge, whoever puts in the relocates and other utilities, and you get the design, we get no other objections. We have that 30-day period because this resident is 6720. It's not a done issue if we go with the recommendation tonight. They will still have, once the final EA comes in and you get to look at it, they will still have a chance to come and object to it. And hopefully you're still having discussions with possible alternatives. But if we outright say no tonight to this recommendation and give him, we don't realign it, we leave it as is, that really puts our EA back and total design into a different area where we're at presently. Is that correct?
Yes, certainly. If council tonight decides to remove the realigned intersection, realigning the east leg of Buffard from the EA, we will have to circle back with the consultant. We will have to find a solution on how best to deal with it without following that alignment, which will push us to having to probably look at realignment to the east side of Buffard, which will then put us into, again, we would have to notify all those residents of this change. And certainly we have to explain to them why the change is occurring and things of that nature. So again, it's not going to, we may be back again relative to some of the other residents if we find a different realignment on the east side of Buffard. And certainly from the aspect of meeting the intent of the environmental assessment, you are obligated and required to find the least, again, find the solution to the problem, and then find the solution to the problem that causes the least disruption from the environmental aspect standpoint, from both cultural heritage, the environment, water quality, injurious affection, property impacts, and all of that type of stuff. So it would be a hard press to bring this forward, affecting 6 to 8 residents, and finding a similar solution that affects 1 resident, which would probably all cost relatively the same cost, probably a little bit more with affecting a larger amount of residents, but certainly we would be back to the drawing board with another public consultation and things of that nature.
Well, thank you. I think it's been said more than once. This is not something that we enjoy doing, taking someone's home. His understanding was he could live there. He got a building permit, assuming, hey, I'm here. And as Mr. Marr said, that's not part of the process about an EA. But at the end of the day, I think Mr. Reynolds said, we're doing this for 30,000 people. And yes, it's going to disrupt some, 1, 20, 30, we don't know. Once the final EA comes in, we'll have a better picture of exactly what we have to do. But in the meantime, hopefully, if we go with the recommendation, I shouldn't have said it that way, hopefully consultation, correspondence between the municipality and Mr. Ayatona and his client can come to some agreement, and maybe there won't be an agreement and we'll have to go to whatever the final EA is. The thing that really bothers me at the end of the day, if we don't do this, we still have the 3rd worst intersection for accidents in front of us. So that's going to be something else we're going to have to address at some time. So I'll give it back to council. And what's your pleasure? Councillor Reynolds.
All right. Given the fact that there's more data that would need to be brought forward, I don't think that we're in the place to cancel this realignment at this point. The data it's not provided to us to make that kind of decision tonight. So I do believe that the recommendation on the table is to have administration go back with the proponent as well as the consultant and work out the best possible scenario before it's presented to council.
You're moving that, Councillor Reynolds?
I am.
Is that a question, Councillor Dicho, or you second?
Second.
Second, okay. All in favor of the recommendation that council refer the resident and their representatives to continue working with town administration and the town's consultant through the formal environmental assessment addendum process. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Oh, okay. So Mr. Ekpata, you're for. Just confirming that.
Based on what my colleague, Mr. Reynolds said, yes, sir. There will
Okay.
be some more back and forth with Mr. Ayatona and his client.
That moves unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ayatona. Okay, we have correspondence, the Fort Erie resolution regarding capital gains tax on primary residence. I'll just give you my 2 cents worth. We don't want this. Nobody wants this. We have people who are going to retire, sell their home. Some have lived in that house for 50 years, and that's their nest egg. And now the government's going to take capital gains, which is basically take half of that and put it on your income and end up with 25% or less. Mr. Militia, being an accountant, he's trying to stay out of it, but I think
I would agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think one of the other dangers that's not identified in the information provided by Fort Erie is that, you know, many homeowners, many property owners have seen increases in assessment, and again, unfortunately, some of the answers that municipalities are providing, and justifiably so, is that, when there's been an increase, much of the information coming back or comments coming back from residents is that, well, it's still the same house I live in, but I'm paying more tax because my assessment's gone up. Well, if from that perspective, if they're not able to realize what the value is of their home when they dispose of it at whatever point in time, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's when they downsize into something else, or whatever life brings for them, it certainly will impact their financial situation and their well-being going forward. And it runs contra to the fact that, if the assessment's going up, you will get it in the end, so to speak, in terms of the in terms of the sale of the property. So this is not something that we would support. Again, from a personal perspective, number one, but even from a professional perspective, it's a difficult road to go down. And again, if this is a lever that the federal government's looking to pull to slow down the escalating housing costs, I'm not sure this is going to do that, to be quite honest. I know they're trying to get a handle on, quote unquote, the house flippers, if you will. But by and large, I'll say it in LaSalle, that's maybe 5% of the houses. The other 90% of the houses, those are people who've been living there for much longer than the 2 or 3 years as they go through. So I would encourage council to agree with the resolution that is put forth by Fort Erie to basically find another way.
Thank you, Mr. Militia, for clarifying that, because when you said you didn't want to support this, I took this as you didn't want to support the capital gains, but support this memo from Fort Erie. Council's pleasure. Councilor Desjardins.
Thank you. I'm wondering, can we just make a motion to receive this report?
You can do whatever you like.
Okay,
I would recommend we receive and endorse. We want to put a lot of pressure on the federal government, because any homeowner that you can think of, if they're flippers, like Mr. Militia said, there's a home residency time for them to be exempt from capital gains. But if people are just flipping, like you see on TV, they buy a house, redo it and flip it, they're paying capital gains on that anyway, presently.
Okay, so if we make the motion to receive and endorse?
Sure.
Okay,
If
I'll buy that.
that's your wish.
That's my wish.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. I agree. I'd absolutely like to endorse this. I think this is something we need to do to help any of our residents in our communities who are looking to sell over the next few years, because the increases are huge and these are their residential homes. They are not flipping them. So I definitely think we can.
Thank you. Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had an opportunity to attend a conference and heard a speech by Prime Minister Trudeau about what he feels is bigger than COVID and the biggest problem in our country, which is the housing crisis. And that's the words that he, this was not really discussed. There were other alternatives that were discussed, things that are being done in BC to try to curb some of that foreign investment in our country and things like that. So there are other alternatives out there. And I agree that going after our own people, people that have lived here and that have supported our communities and things, is the wrong thing to do. So I will support the motion.
So we have Councilor Desjardins moving to receive and endorse. Support Councilor Malash. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. We have active transportation policy. Yes, Jonathan is with us. Jonathan.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I just want to give a brief summary and update on the active transportation facility policy. This is a policy that
Oh, sorry, Jonathan, did I miss something?
Excuse me, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excuse me, Mayor Bondi. There's the next item on the agenda, the Rural Economic Development Grant Agreement.
Did you hear that, Joe? I didn't get it clearly, Linda. What was that, Linda? Sorry.
Can you hear me? It's okay.
Joe, you're muted.
So I think that the on the addendum to the agenda, there is the report number, I believe it's E2, which is the Rural Economic Development Grant Agreement.
Okay. So E2, rural, I don't have it, so I apologize for that. Mr. Langers, do council members have that addendum? Deputy Mayor saying no, Councillor Ekpata no. Who has it? Councillor Desjardins and Councillor Renault. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to proceed with that, Mr. Militia.
Well, again, I believe this is just the execution of an agreement with the government for a grant application, and Mr. Langlois is on.
Oh, okay. Well, if that's it, we don't. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Langlois. Welcome.
I can give a high level overview. So as part of to enter into the agreement, we require council approval.
Okay.
So we did apply quite some time ago for the RED grant.
Yes.
We applied for a total of $400,000 and we're successful at receiving a grant, which will pay for 30% of the project, which is $120,000. So this report's just to for council to endorse us to enter into the agreement, and then we'll receive our funding.
How much money?
$120,000.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mara, you want to add?
Yeah, Mr. Langlois, the money for this grant, Mr. Langlois, is for the holiday display, light display, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so this money is increasing the budget for the holiday light display, and it's going to be utilized with respect to increasing a number of things at the holiday light display. For example, with this grant money, we are looking at providing and purchasing the decorations for the tree. So it won't just be a lit tree; it'll be a lit tree with some decorations. We are looking at a number of additional features. We're trying to find out what's available and things of that nature for us. We're looking at possibly providing piped in music throughout the entire facility, and also some increased lights and things of that, decorations along Malden Road between Normandy and Todd Lane, as kind of a bit of a caption of where this additional where this grant is going to be utilized in enhancing the already put in place holiday light displays at Cenotaph Park.
And just to add to that, we did have a 10-year plan where we'd put approximately $10,000 to $20,000 in each year's budget. So this is going to allow us to move quicker and complete all those future projects all at once with this grant. You're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dale. I'm sorry, council's pleasure. Question, Councilor Renault.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, I have a question about the funding formula or structure here. So we have an amount of money that we have agreed to spend from our capital in the last budget, and we're all excited to see that move forward. My question is, can this money be used in place of some of that? So, I mean, if we had, you know, I'll be honest with you, I don't remember the exact figures, but $350,000 budget, we're saying we're going to augment that. Can we use it in place of, or is that actually part of the deal? We're only getting it because we've agreed to spend the amount that we have. I'm just looking at, you know, how our own money can go to other projects. If you could just comment on that and how that works would be great.
Absolutely. So for the 2021 budget, the original budget was $330,000. The RED grant project submission was $400,000. So we'll be able to spend above and beyond. It's a higher number than what we originally planned in our 2021 budget. There is about $50,000 of expenses that do not qualify as part of the grant. For example, some of the wiring and sound systems and whatnot. So the total project cost is going to be $450,000. So that's above and beyond the $330,000 that we budgeted. But that amount above and beyond is fully covered by the money that we're going to receive as part of the grant.
And are all those things, obviously, they're necessary for this project to be successful?
That's correct. The biggest part of the project is the Christmas tree that we've ordered. But then there is a lot of other displays that we've ordered and lights and whatnot that'll go along Front Road and all and throughout the town. But the main display area is here at the Cenotaph Park.
All right. Thank you very much.
Council's pleasure. Deputy Mayor Blosh.
Move recommendation.
Support. Councilor Dicho Spagnuolo, all in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, thanks for bringing that to my attention, Ms. Jean.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but we do have, as part of the addendum, which I believe was distributed on Friday around 1 o'clock via email. There was an email that came out from Ms. Vallée that came out, but we do have an additional report on the agenda. So if you didn't have the first one, you won't have this one. This is a summary of the town hall renovation tender, and Mr. Morrow will bring you through that report.
So that would be E3.
This would be E3. That's correct.
Mr. Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As council is aware, at the last council meeting, we tried to do a pre-tender award for the town hall renovations. The tenders closed on June 25th, and the dollar values submitted were slightly higher than what we anticipated as part of the pre-tender award. So here we are tonight to do a formal tender award with respect to the project. The tenders closed on the 25th, and we had 4 submissions submit. The low tender value submitted was by SJOC Construction Inc. in the amount of $194,000 plus HST. Certainly, when we did the pre-tender award at the last council meeting, we sought approval for an upper limit of $137,000 roughly. So here we are tonight to kind of review and get council's approval to proceed. Although the tender amount was submitted at $194,000, at $194,000, out of that $194,000, $80,000 of that is a cash allowance. And so it's a significant cash allowance, and cash allowances are put into contracts to account for unforeseen instances. Well, we open up a wall, we didn't realize that was there, or we have rotted timbers or things of that nature. So we don't anticipate utilizing this cash allowance of $80,000 because, again, we're in a relatively new building. We have the same architects involved. They are aware. We utilized in their minor renovations. In nature. Although the contract value that we are seeking tonight to approve is $194,000, when you take off the cash allowance, which we don't expect to get into, the total value that will be paid out at the end of this contract is roughly $114,000 plus HST. So therefore, tonight we're here before you seeking your approval to proceed and award this contract to SJOC Construction Inc. The JP Thompson Architects, who is our architects working on this, they have made contact with this contractor and they are aware of the situation. They have familiarity with the job. They do similar jobs of this nature for other municipalities. So we're comfortable with proceeding with this recommendation. So the recommendation for you tonight is that council receive this report and approve awarding this tender to SJOC Construction Inc. in the value of $194,000 plus HST. And it's made up of those various aspects just outlined in my report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Council questions? Councilor Renner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Based on, the original numbers, when you see the numbers, it seems so much different. But the explanation that it's basically a contingency fund, and knowing that we're going with Thompson again, who actually knows the project better than any of us know the project. I feel very confident in awarding this tender tonight. So I will put the motion forward to accept the tender.
Moved by Councillor Renault, support Councillor Dicho Spagnolo. Any discussion? I just have a question, Mr. Mara. I'm assuming, and I'm just trying to interpret your words, because Thompson was our architect, they'll be working with SJOC. They would have to approve anything that would go into the 80,000 cash reserve. Is that correct?
Yes, through the cash allowance, the architect does approve it, and ultimately the town approves the architect. So that communication happens between the town and the architect of what we're coming up against and what the additional funds are for, and that approval process is in place.
Thank you. I agree with your comments. Relatively new building with our architect working side by side with the contractor. I don't see anything. There might be negligible amount, but I can't see anything major happening. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mara. Mr. Osborne, I apologize. Thank you.
No problem. Again, good evening, and thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. So I just have a brief update and summary on our active transportation facility policy that was approved at council in December of 2020. So the main objective, one of the main objectives of that policy was to establish a grouping and lists of priorities for upcoming active transportation projects. So we're just going to review the Group A projects that we had on that list. And Group A projects are primarily projects where there's gaps in the network and minimal infrastructure work is required. So on the report, you'll see the list of the Group A projects. The first four on that list, we've begun the environmental work, which is one of the main probably obstacles with those jobs. So that work will likely go on this year and into next year. The goal is to begin some design next year, and then hopefully in 2023 be able to start building some of those trails. The Ellis Street trail will be installed this year as part of the development that's happening on Ellis. A majority of it is being done by the developer, and there's a couple pieces that the town is taking care of to complete that. And then there's the Front Road pilot project on that Group A list, which was a recommendation of the Active Transportation Master Plan. And there's not an immediate plan with that at the moment, although as Front Road Park and things develop, it is something that's, I'd say, in our minds on what we might do with that. So that's a brief overview for the financial part of it. Currently and in the past, council's been allocating $500,000 annually for pedestrian safety and active transportation. So if that continues, we'll be able to continue on with our list as we have it. And likely, as we kind of work through the first few projects, and maybe every couple of years, we'll continually reviewing this, and at an appropriate time, we'll probably bring that policy back to council, updating anything that's required. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Carrick, then Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick one. So as we move forward this fall, we're supposed to be getting a report back for alternating parking for emergency vehicle access. So as we're doing this master transportation plan, how's that going to affect that? We're talking about bicycle lanes and other lanes and stuff we want to put in. So if we're going to do parking on one side of the street or the other, how much of an impact is that going to have on what we're moving forward?
I believe for the most part, like this group of projects that's listed in Group A is all off-road trails that shouldn't affect on-street parking too much. Even with that, a lot of our no parking, I think that's going to come in that is kind of deciphers between collector roads and residential roads. And usually when it comes to a collector road, the goal is to to bring that active transportation off-road or outside of the lane. So I don't know, Pete, if you have any additional comments on that.
No, Mr. Osborne explained that well. The projects as part of our Group A are all off-road. So implementing alternating parking certainly will not affect any of these priorities for the next 5 years that we have identified in this particular priority list.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not saying it's a done deal, but I just wanted some clarification just to make sure that we're not going to be coming into bumps down the road here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Any other council questions? Or Councillor Desjardins, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Then Councillor Brennan.
I just have a quick question. On here, there are developer responsibilities for active transportation projects, and it's addressing sidewalks. On page, let me see, 67, the developer's responsibility list is there. Is there a time frame that developers have to finish this? Do they have to have a certain part of their project completed? So we don't run into any questions about sidewalks going forward? Thank you.
They don't necessarily have a time limit to complete the projects that's shown on the map, but as those developments come forward and those facilities are within or around those developments, there'll be time restrictions within the development agreement on when those facilities have to get built, which is typically within the first year or two of the servicing of those developments.
Okay, so there's nothing definite. You're saying it's usually within the first year or two?
No, nothing until developments come forward with their own lands. Like there might be a few on this map that have active developments that we know are occurring right now, and those will occur as per the agreements. But as far as forecasting when all of this will be done, it's hard to say.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brennan, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Jonathan, I just want to say thank you. As we know, garbage collection and trails in all our customer service reviews and things are the things that people in LaSalle are most passionate about. And as we know, just in the last few months, we've had delegates in front of council looking for specifically that Ellis Street path from Wyoming to Serenity. This exercise shows that administration is listening and getting the job done and prioritizing. And I want to thank you for putting this in front of the community so that they can see that we are moving forward and we're continuing to do the things that we're known to do well and the things that they love. So thank you very much for the update, and I look forward to the next.
Welcome.
I echo your comments, Councillor Reno. Jonathan's been doing a pretty good job. Council's pleasure. Councillor Desjardins.
Oops, I'd make the motion to receive the report. Thank you.
Support. Councillor Reno, all in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jonathan. And we have the holiday light display programming. Ms. Finero.
Good evening. Worship and members of council, the report before you provides a framework of the planning that's currently taking place in preparation for the inaugural holiday light display at Cenotaph Park. As noted in the report, the programming will center around our heritage and culture, giving us the opportunity to begin raising awareness and gaining community support for these types of activities as we further develop the Benoit House. A variety of activities are planned that build upon our existing event base, including our successful night markets, food truck Fridays, and live music events. In addition to the organized and scheduled activities, other activities are being planned that can take place regardless of restrictions, such as take-home activity kits and a digital challenge that can be completed throughout the display using a smartphone. The total estimated cost for the holiday light programming is estimated at $7,200, which will be funded through the miscellaneous events category in the 2021 Culture and Recreation operating budget. That concludes my report, and I'm available should there be any questions.
Council questions. Council wishes. Councillor Di Spagnuolo. Support.
Make the
Moved, okay, and support Councillor Desjardins, I believe I saw your hand. All in favor? That carries. Thank you, Ms. Finero, and look forward to our trial night market on the 25th of July, right? Look forward to it. Thank you. May 2021 financial statement and financial reports. Mr. Langlois.
Your worship, members of council, there really hasn't been a lot of change since the April report. The one area where we are obviously tracking a little higher than budget is in the Culture and Rec department, just because we haven't been operational. The main areas, excuse me, the arenas, we still have all the overhead costs and whatnot, but the government grants that we have received have definitely helped with that, as well as the kind of shuffling around some of the positions and some other strategies that administration had come up with to reduce costs. That's helped offset that cost pressure. And then good news moving forward, as we start to reopen the Vollmer, that should definitely help mitigate some of those pressures of lost revenue. So that's some good news moving forward, and hopefully we can continue in that direction. But I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Councillor Akpata, I know the question you're going to ask. Councillor Akpata.
Thank you, Your Worship. Much to being predictable. Mr. Langlois, with your financial statements, I've reviewed them. Are there any areas of concern that you'd like to bring before us right now?
No areas of concern. We're doing pretty healthy compared to our budget for 2021 so far.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Your Worship.
Well, I'm not letting you off easy, Mr. Langlois. Can you explain to me, because we're booming in our construction, why we have almost zero in our supplemental levy, please? I know you're going to have a good explanation.
Absolutely. Your Worship, members of council. So we do receive 6 supplemental assessments each year. The first one that we receive is always in the month of June. So that's usually quite a bit higher, a larger one, because it's 6 months of activity and assessments. And then we receive one in July, August, September, October, and the last one in November for the year. So this is the May statement that you have before you, but actually I have June's financials right here. So as at the end of June, our supplemental assessments are $586,000, which is we've almost reached our budget for the year. Last year, at the end of June, it was $474,000. So we are tracking a little bit higher than last year, but there is one kind of a little anomaly to note. There was a condo building which individual units were assessed. So that has increased us a little bit. You'll see in I think the next council meeting we'll have our tax write-off. So there'll be about $100-something thousand write-off to kind of offset that the new assessments for the individual units. So we are tracking a little bit higher than last year, which is good. So hopefully on the next couple of months we can see our supplemental assessments continue to increase with all the activity happening around town.
Thank you, Mr. Longo. It's nice for you to bring us good news.
Happy to give it.
Okay, council's pleasure. Moved by Councillor Dicho Spagnolo and Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Longo. Safe travel stamp. Ms. Hadre.
Thank you. Good evening. To Mayor Bondi and members of council, this report outlines that the town of LaSalle has received approval from the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario for the safe travel stamp at both the Vollmer complex and at the LaSalle Civic Center. So this designation is based on safety protocols that the World Travel and Tourism Council have put together for aspects of the hospitality and tourism sector. They have done this in conjunction with TIO, as well as support from Tourism Windsor-Essex County. So together, both those organizations are very in support of this and asking the municipalities to support it as well. So this designation plays a crucial role in the future of travel making people feel safe and secure, giving them the idea that where they're going is a place where safety matters, where the protocols are being followed, whether those are protocols for COVID or other safety, health and safety protocols as well. So this designation will be shared with our community through a media release, through social media, and on the town's website. We're hoping that this will encourage other participation in the program from our LaSalle businesses, so that as people start to get out and get comfortable and recognize that seal, that designation, they'll know that that business is following those safety protocols. For any LaSalle businesses that do receive the designation, that stamp will be added to their listing on the business directory on the town's website. So currently at this time, there are 4 designations in the town of LaSalle and about 125 across Windsor and Essex County. So as a municipality now, we will be sharing this information with our local businesses in hopes that they will get the designation as well. And I'm available for any questions.
Council questions, Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Don. Don, obviously our 2 biggest operations, the Town Hall and the Volmer. Are there any other opportunities that we may have to enhance the look of some of our other areas of town, like possibly our project on Front Road or our Petite Côte or anything like that? Is there any opportunity to add to our inventory of stamps?
From a municipal perspective, once the event center and the museum are online, we would be able to work with those. I believe the town of Amherstburg has put on some of their park locations as well. Those are a little bit more difficult, I think, because we don't really have those type of safety protocols at the parks. We're not cleaning that equipment. We're not putting those safety standards into those areas. But that is something we can look at as well going forward to see if that does make sense in the future.
Thank you. I think that'd be a great goal for us.
Any other council questions? Council's pleasure. Moved by Councillor Reno. Support Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Audrey.
Thank you.
Before we go to bylaws, I've been informed that our next council meeting for July 27th, there is nothing on the agenda. So we would need a mover and a seconder to cancel that council meeting. Councillor Desjardins and Councillor Carrick, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Mr. Militia, that's all you need to cancel that meeting? Okay. Bylaws. On all 6 bylaws, all 3 readings. Oh, Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Worship. I'll admit I don't always have a chance to look and dive too deeply into every bylaw that we have in front of us, but one that kind of stood out in front of me today has to do with Bylaw 8590, and this is about putting a driving range in what almost seems like a residential neighborhood. I'd just like some comments from the planning department. Was there any public consultation? Did this come? I don't remember this coming before council. So I'm just wondering, is this something that is routine? A little bit of information on that bylaw before I actually vote on it.
Councillor Reno, I don't see an 8590. So did you just give the wrong number? Because it did come to council. The driving range would be right across from Essex Golf and Country Club. It was brought forward.
I'm looking at an explanatory note to Bylaw 8590. This zoning bylaw amendment affects lands located on the west side of Mary Drive near Sandwich West Park. Do we have, and I believe that was part of the package tonight.
Mr. Burgess.
Your Worship, my apologies. The Mary Drive notice, the explanatory note that's there has the correct address. However, this is for the 2 condominium towers which are to be built on this property. So the explanatory note will be changed. And as you'll see in the zoning regulations, it explains that there are 2 apartment buildings with the 146 units. So it's just the description which is contained within the explanatory note just needs to be altered. I apologize for that.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with putting a driving range in amongst those homes.
No, this is for the two condominium towers.
Thank you. I'm satisfied with that. Thank you.
Okay. Is there an 8590 or is that in the addendum, Mr. Militia?
Mr. Mayor, that there are two bylaws that are in the addendum that were not included in the original report. There was 80, I believe it's 8588 and 8590 are the two bylaws that are included in the addendum.
Okay, so I'll correct my comment that there are 8 bylaws, not 6. Are there any?
Mr. Mayor, just that we do have the summary of reports to council as well that we did not get to.
Thank you. Summary reports to council. Councilor Reno, motion received. And Deputy Mayor Malach, thank you. It's a simple physical thing. I flipped my page and it all went together. I apologize. Okay, now on all 8 bylaws, 3 readings. Councilor Desjardins and Councilor Dicho Spagnuolo, all in favor. That carries. Thank you. Council questions. I think there's a problem. Nobody's asking a question. Statements by council members. Councilor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you to everyone. I have 3 comments tonight. I'm sorry. First of all, I would like to say thank you to whoever instigated the new accessible buttons on our doorways. Instead of having to push a button, you now have to wave in front of them. I ran into them this morning when I came into the town hall, and I immediately thought of about 6 folks I know who are going to be able to use those versus the push button. So thank you very much for doing that. The second thing is also a thank you. I was doing some business out of the city, and when I gave my address, the business said, well, where's LaSalle? So I kind of explained, and then I handed off one of my business cards. And when I went to complete the business this past weekend, the gentleman I was working with said, you know, your website for a small community is amazing. He said, it really makes me want to come to LaSalle and check it out. So I wanted to pass that along and say thank you to Dawn and the IT group and whoever's been involved for making us look so good and for having people want to come and visit us. And the third thing I have, this is again a bit of an accessibility thing. I received a call from the LaSalle Rowing Club, who has a para rowing group. They have 3 now. They're adding, I think Doug said, another 7 rowers. Excuse me. They are looking at applying for a Trillium grant to do some work at the River Dance Center that is not totally accessible. And they would like to come to council with their proposal and find out how we can go forward with helping them with that grant. They've already talked to Mark Masanovich and to Patty Finara about things that have to be changed out. So my question, comment, statement right now is how do we help the group now? And that's all I have.
Mr. Militia.
Certainly, with respect to your third point with respect to the Trillium grant application, certainly if you could have them contact us, you can have them contact me directly, and then we can start that process. I believe that Ms. Funaro has been dealing with them, and so it may be a matter of council endorsing their application based on them being a tenant within our building. So there may be a technical side of things in terms of the application. I see Ms. Funaro just popped on. She may be able to provide a little more detailed information.
Thank you. I don't see Mr. Mara on the call anymore, but Mr. Mara and I did meet with the rowing club. Oh, there he is. We did meet with the rowing club several months ago, and where it was left was that they were going to bring a proposal forward to us on specifically what they would like to do. So we have not received that proposal to my knowledge, unless Mr. Morrow's received it, but I have not received anything further from them. Excuse me.
No, I just talked to Mr. Diot again this week, and he asked how he moves forward with the communication with the Trillium Grant and how we can work together because they're a tenant in one of our buildings. So I said I would bring it forward tonight. So I will get back to him and ask him to approach and fill in the requirements to be a delegation at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Militia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of the first two comments that Councilor Descharlet did make, again, the push buttons that you see, or the wave activated, I don't know why I just did that, but the wave activated door openers, my door didn't open here, so it must not be working, but those were part of a larger effort that were made through Mr. Masanovich and his group and the facilities folks. As part of, again, we did get some grant funding coming out of the COVID resiliency grant. So it was a bit of a double whammy for us. We were able to put these activators in from a accessibility perspective, but also from a limit the amount of touch points for staff, for visitors to town hall and the various other facilities, so that they can just come in and not have to activate it with an actual push mode, like a touch motion. So we were able to do that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was the amount of work that we had done was somewhere in the range of 60 to 80,000. I think Mr. Langlois has that grant application, but there was other things as well. I mean, those are the ones that you saw, and we're very happy to see those, quite frankly. But there are other, flushing toilets and hand washing stations and things like that we're very happy to have part of our facilities to make things a little easier, both from a cleanliness perspective, from a COVID occupational side of things, as well as for those that may not be or people with varying abilities to have them help from that side. So we're very happy to see that happen. It's been a long time coming. Again, one of the challenges we had was getting the parts during this time, because everybody was doing it, was somewhat challenging. And in terms of the web, we do appreciate the comments. Again, I've had the opportunity to go through the web from stem to stern over the last little bit, and it is much better. I will say it's much more accessible visually. It's much more appealing. We are getting a lot of positive feedback. And again, I know that Ms. Hadre and Mr. DeJesu in the IT side, they worked pretty diligently with the rest of the department head group and management group to really move forward with that. Part of that also as well is to make our website more as accessible as we can. We're working through that process as we go through. We've discovered that we weren't as accessible as we wanted to be, and so we certainly made those steps forward. So we do appreciate the positive feedback that comes back, because we sometimes we hear a lot of the negative, but it's nice to hear the positive as well.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins, for the positive comments. Councillor Reno, only if it's positive.
Now you just took away all my thunder. It is, you know what, I would like to echo Councillor Desjardins in her comments on the website. The website is great. It looks very clean. It looks very slick. It's very easy to use on the phone, which is what we have in our pocket, all the time. But I would like to just bring a little attention to one section that applies basically just to the people in this Zoom room. When you come up to council meetings, it brings the most current council meetings up, and it basically brings you right into the great big 300-page PDF version of the meeting, which sometimes is hard to navigate. We had the PDF version before, as well as the HTML version, or whatever version you could actually click on and look at just specific things. I would just ask that if the IT department could just take a look at the functionality of the agendas. As if you go back and you can actually backtrack, and you can get to those additional versions that we're used to and that we appreciate. But this week it was a broken link. So again, I don't want I don't want to rain on the parade because you know what? It really, really is good. Just the one little tool that we're all using. I just would like a little attention put to. Thank you.
Ms. Hadre.
Thank you. There are a couple of back-end issues that we are working with, and that is one of them. So we are aware and we are working between eSolutions and eScribe to get that up and functioning. Once it's working, it will be back to the way it was. You will have the option of HTML or PDF. Just where we need a little bit more patience to get through making everything configure properly and get it all working. But we're hoping within the next couple of weeks, we should have that functioning the way it used to.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It's nice to know, Mr. Reno, Councilor Reno, you bring up something and they're already working on it. So they're doing their job. Councilor Dicho Spagnolo.
I just wanted to, through you, I just wanted to recognize the LaSalle Police, just to say thank you. I saw that they went to Toronto to pay their respects for the fallen police officer, and I think that is very important that they did that and very respectful, and it just shows that how great our town is, not only for our own community, but also to support other officers and communities as well during rough times. So just wanted to acknowledge the LaSalle Police.
Acting Deputy Chief Jason Woods.
Thank you very much. It was one of those sad situations that we have to attend every once in a while, but I think it shines a light on some of the dangerous work we do, but the fragility of it all, where answering what seems to be a call that we go to any day, and this is how it ended. So Councilor Akpato was on the job for a while. I think he would understand it. These are, they become emotional times because think about all the officers you work with and everything we do on a daily basis. So thank you very much for recognizing that. And thank you to Council for always being there for us.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Chief. Appreciate what you do for us every day. Any other statements by council members? Seeing none, reports from committees. Notices of motion. Confirmatory bylaw. First reading, Councilor Reno, Councilor Desjardins, all in favor. That carries. Second, Deputy Mayor Malash and Councilor Akpato, all in favor. That carries. And third and final reading, Councilor Carrick and Councilor Dicho Spagnolo, all in favor. That carries. And I have Councilor Reno with a question. Or are you just voting?
Probably just a lost vote.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the month. We won't have a meeting in July, so we'll see everyone in August. Stay healthy, stay safe, and hopefully you'll be doing some traveling when things open up next week. Take care. Good night, everyone.